There we go. Well, hello everyone. So nice to see you all, especially during the summer months. This is great that we have so many of us here. I'm gonna share my screen. Whoops. Now what happened to my slide deck? Goodness. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, a couple more people coming in. All right. Well, welcome to everyone, and it's super to see you guys. We're going to just slip right to the agenda, and here's what we have for you today. We're going to talk about internships and volunteering. Then we'll move on to Matt's great reorganized job seeker and career tools page, which is really amazing. Next, we'll be moving on to the new workbook that is just about ready to come out. After that, want to show you the client-based class projects on the website. Those are all up. Following that, we'll talk about digital badges. That will be led by Rosina. The World of Work blog, Priscilla will talk about that, and then a few updates. So that's what we've got for you today. So first up on the internships and volunteering is Zara. And you may recall from the newsletter last time, Zara is the intern that we are lucky, very, very lucky to have right now. And she's going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zara, as Elizabeth mentioned. Thank you, Elizabeth. You're too kind. I am a recent graduate from the University of Calgary. So I did my Bachelor's of Science in Biological Anthropology and then directly moved on into business. I did a Master's in Management and I graduated in November. Since then, I've been traveling. And once I came back, I had the opportunity to network and to meet with Elizabeth. And thankfully, now I've been working as an intern and it's been amazing. So a bunch of responsibilities that I've had over the course of my internship. I'll say one of them is working on the development of the workbook. Another is recruiting volunteers. So we have two of them in this call right now, JJ and Irene, and also creating a framework for the differences between an internship and a volunteer program, which I'll be presenting, and how to onboard volunteers. The goal of my internship for me is learning as much as I can, learning and interacting with senior management, networking, what are skills that I can improve on, and how can I move towards my goals, which are working in consulting, hopefully, or organizational change and management. Perfect. All right, so I guess we can start off on what are the big differences between an internship program versus a volunteer program? In terms of the purpose of an internship program is primarily to gain professional skills and experience, or to hone the skills that you already have in a professional environment. Volunteering, it comes with a altruistic goal, which is helping the community and advancing a cause. The duration for internship versus volunteering differs in terms of the expectation of time commitment. So for an intern, usually 15 to 25 hours is expected, whereas for a volunteer, at least 5 hours per week is expected. Other than that, volunteers have a lot of variability. They can keep volunteering on and off for a few months to years, whereas an internship itself is very structured, as you'll see in the next point, and is usually either a semester or over the summer months or for years. But it is already a set date that is agreed upon, and often there will be a contract that is signed before the internship starts. So yes, the structure, very structured. You'll have your deliverables, you'll have your hourly expectations, you'll have your supervisors listed, and you will also have a formal application process, including, it could be a cover letter or sending in your resume. Whereas for a volunteer, yes, you might send in your resume, maybe, but it's very less structured, mostly just, we're happy to have you on board. We'll take any help we need. So in terms of compensation, internships can be paid or unpaid. With ACRN, mine is unpaid at the moment, but I have done an internship that was paid as part of my program. And that was agreed upon by a contract. And there was also a subsidy provided by Haskell as part of the program. So there are some legal and compliance matters that occur with internships that you might not have with volunteer work as such, because they are. In terms of supervision, I've been lucky enough to have direct mentorship through Elizabeth and working with Ryle and Jennifer as an intern with ACRN, and those are the senior members of ACRN, as you know. Whereas for volunteers, they'll mostly have to go through mid-level members, or they might have to report to me, or I might be the person relaying information that I get from Elizabeth to them and back and forth. So I'll be the middleman. And so they might not have the access to senior members as much as an intern might. In terms of learning opportunities, networking for both is a big thing. The ability to connect with, reach out, learn about different coworkers, different students, different practitioners, scholars, people working in the field, just learning how to speak to people, network, and what are the expectations? What are the different industries that anthropologists are working in? For me personally, going through this internship, it's been super eye-opening, seeing the diversity of fields that anthropologists are in and how they've reached the stage that they're at in their career. From opening a business or working in med-anth or working in forensics and all of those things. It's honestly, it's amazing. And that's why I'm so passionate about working with ACRN and helping future anthropologists, current anthropologists, spread the word and be proud of our discipline and make sure that it's one of the prominent ones that people talk about. Why are people just talking about psychology? Why not anthropology? Like, it's just as valid, if not more. So yes, that's kind of what my learning is coming from this opportunity. And for the volunteers, the basic. All right, let me introduce our newest volunteers. So we have Irene. Hi, Irene.
Hello.
Irene is a third-year undergraduate student at California State University. She is majoring in anthropology and interactive marketing and is interested in consumer research, business anthropology, and media. She's working with our media team and very much helping to promote the workbook. JJ is a new PhD graduate and is at the University of Wisconsin. She's majoring in anthropology, and her focus was in aging and care equity. Her professional interests are human-centered design, storytelling, and design thinking, and she'll mostly be working on the UX, UI side of things.
Great presentation. Hi, JJ.
Hi, everyone.
So we're really lucky that these three women have decided that they want to work with us because we're just giving them all kinds of stuff to do, which is fabulous. And I think, based on reports, they're enjoying it. So that's good. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about the reorganization of the student page of the website. And specifically, there is an area under there which is called Job Seeker and Career Tools. If you have not seen it, it's worth taking a look, but let me just show you some screenshots of what it looks like. So first of all, when you click on Job Seeker and Career Tools, you will see 7 different rectangular shapes, each one representing a step in the so-called career journey. So the first step is you just sort of thinking about things. You're not really sure what you want to do. You're basically just trying to understand yourself and what your interests are and where you might be headed. Second step is looking and exploring a whole bunch of different possible careers that anthropologists right now are doing. In the third step, there are certain skills that you will need to do any career. And so we have tools and other materials that are there to help you. Fourth step has to do with networking. How do you do it? How do you build up your professional contacts so that you can use them effectively and get your name known within certain communities of people that you hope to work with. Fifth step, now you're preparing your job applications. You have found some things online, perhaps, or you have heard through your informational interviews that there's an opening in such and such an organization. Sixth step, you actually get asked to be interviewed. And so there are some resources there that will help you interview effectively. And then finally, the seventh step, you have landed your job. And so how do you use anthropology in the workplace? So that's essentially what you will see. And then again, just to show you, let's take one of those steps. Let's take step 2. When you go in there, you will see there are categories of resources. So there are tools, all the tools that we've built, the blogs that pertain to exploring careers. This is the World of Work blog that we operate ourselves. And then a bunch of other stuff, presentations and videos, various publications, very recent ones. And then other helpful links that would pertain, in this case, to possible careers. I also wanted to just show you that we have been building tools recently, like MAD. And in this particular step, we now have 10 tools, and they are listed here. Each one is somewhere between 2 and, let's say, 4 pages in length. And it contains very helpful information about what that career might consist of, the keywords that you would use in searching for particular positions, and so on. And again, to give you an example of what some of these new tools look like, here's one on building a career in medical anthropology. This one was done by Nazia Hussein and reviewed by quite a few medical anthropologists. And it gives you ideas depending on, what degree you have. So if you're a BA level person, if you are, or a BS person, if you are a master's graduate, or if you're a PhD graduate. Okay, Jennifer.
Yeah, and you just want me to go ahead and introduce it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so a lot of the work that we've done on the website is going to be incorporated into the structure of our workbook that will be debuting hopefully by the end of next month. Uh, and you'll see that we've refreshed all of those tools for the website to kind of meet some accessibility standards, but we recognize that for some people, interacting with information in a digital format is not always the most accessible or easy. So we recognize there's an opportunity to create a physical copy of all of those tools. So the workbook, I had initially envisioned that we're just going to take all the tools and slap them together, but it's an actual book. So there's a lot of new content in there that you're going to have. And the vision for this workbook is really to provide something for instructors to use in their classes around professional development, but also provide a resource that if you're an individual that maybe you've already graduated, that you can work through this independently in developing your career. So I want to give a big shout out to Zara, our intern. She's been a big part of doing that refresh on the tools and consolidating all of these resources into the workbook. And of course, Elizabeth has done a ton of work, and Raul's come in and given us some guidance from his publishing background. And let's see, did I hit on all these? Oh, and our other real goal here too, one of the reasons why we've decided we're going to do print on demand through Amazon. Well, I know Amazon's got its own issues. Our goal here is to make this as accessible as possible, and that means as affordable as possible. So we're going to try and put it at the lowest price point we can get away with. And yeah, we'll be having a marketing campaign that Suanna's helping with, sharing the rollout of this as we get it done. So we're in the final sort of editing stage. Fingers crossed I can get this going this weekend. So we should be able to give you a better launch date in a couple weeks.
Thanks. Suena?
Sorry, I
Hi.
stole your thunder.
No, more excitement the better on this project. And so hi from Greater Boston. I am Suanna, and I'm helping out and supporting with the media and outreach process and design. And I'm working with Zahira Agaron on some of the graphic design. She's been so helpful and so skillful in creating these graphics and the cover of the book. So we're going to be announcing today. We have our debut coming soon announcement that's going to be rolling out fairly quickly. We want to make sure that members, people who are on the call, and folks who are part of the larger ACRN network are aware of this coming. We'll be on the lookout for when our final publication date is shareable. And we'll also support the network in being able to spread the word. So we're hoping that we can get a little bit of a viral momentum going here for sharing the announcement and link as the book becomes available. As always, the blog, the website, the tools of various kinds, they are available for sharing at any time. I mentor a number of people across multiple fields. I'm sharing these with people outside of anthropology, and they're finding them useful. So we have a very special resource for our own fields, and I would say they're absolutely amenable to other ones as well. So be sure to follow our social media. Stay tuned or share the membership and subscription link that's on the website, and keep the eyes open for the coming soon, turning to available now in the near future.
Great. I'm going to stop the share for a minute and then maybe we can just entertain any thoughts, questions, comments, whatever people would like to talk about.
I
I
really
have a
like,
question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say that I really like the accessibility factor by placing it at an accessible price point. That's all I was going to say.
Yep, that's our goal. One of our goals.
Hi. Will this be available as ebooks?
Jennifer?
So our priority is getting the paperback ready, but I am going to do my best to get this ready as a Kindle ebook as well.
Yes, and just yesterday I ended up purchasing 10 ISBN numbers. So the second of the numbers will go to the ebook.
Yeah, and I'll add that, I think we conceptualize this workbook as something that's going to have a number of different editions. So this is the first edition that we're launching. But, even as we're putting together this workbook, we had other new tools that were still in process and development. So we'll probably continue to refresh this. So if you have an idea for a tool or you have experience in an industry that you're like, oh, I could totally put together one of these building a career in, or you have a specific method that you really specialize in, we're totally open to that, and we would prioritize including it in our next edition whenever that happens.
Yeah, we're always on the lookout for new tools. So if there's something that you want and you don't see that we have, please contact us. Maybe you would like to take the lead on it, or maybe you know some experts who would be willing to take the lead on it. Either way is fine. Ryle, you were going to say
I
something?
just wanted to say a couple of things. One is, yes, Amazon has its problems, but we thought about this, and one of the things we're trying to do is show younger practitioners, or show students really, that there is an alternative to traditional academic publishing, which takes about 2 years and it results in a book that costs $100. And if you are worried about Amazon's ethics, which I am to some extent, you might want to think about what Taylor and Francis just did with intellectual property. So all the stuff that all of us have written has gone now into the big AI bin and is being regurgitated, and they didn't tell anybody about that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm done with them. They're my publishers, and I'm not going to badmouth them, but I'm not going to do it anymore with them. And I do think the affordability thing was foremost with us. It was getting this stuff out to an audience and having it be as relevant as possible, but not timeless, which is what Jennifer was hinting at, where there's going to be second and third editions, or what you might call iterations of this thing. As we learn more, we'll get more out. And we want you guys to help us do that, because this has been a very collaborative effort so far. Practitioners, instructors, students, we've all worked together on this. And I really think that's a good way to keep going. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
I want to say nice shirt, Ryle.
Oh yeah, thank you. I put this on to see the doctor this morning. He liked it too. He said,
Anybody else with a question or comment?
I'm going to say I'm just very impressed with the whole effort, putting this incredibly pragmatic and accessible body of information out that no one has done before. I mean, it's really a pioneering effort, and it is dead center on what is needed by our students and practitioners. It's very, very on target. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Hi, this is Scarlett. I just want to say this is amazing. I cannot wait to get my hands on this book and really looking forward. I mean, I'm amazed by all of you, all the great work that you guys are doing. Hopefully eventually in the future, you guys can translate this book into different languages so it can, reach more major audience in other countries. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Scarlett, and you're going to be translating it into Espanol para nosotros.
Of course.
All right, great. All right, let me go back to.
I thought about doing it in French actually, but then I thought, no, nobody will buy it in France.
Oh,
Yeah, but
no.
Montreal, we got to include
Well,
the
maybe
Quebecois,
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Il y a beaucoup de
the
personnes qui parlent
Canadians
français.
will, but the continental French don't believe in applied anthropology. They don't think it's possible. So,
Well, there's a couple of people.
yeah, there's maybe two. I know.
Well,
And there's French Africa.
Yes, I'm going to actually promote it once we get it out to my colleagues and cronies in the UK, because I think there is a substantial market there in a few universities like Durham, for example, and Sussex, where people are interested in this sort of thing.
There's also a growing number of applied anthropologists in France. I worked with any number of them. So
oh,
there's,
good.
yeah, there's more and more.
Okay,
Great.
good.
Great.
Patty,
Excellent.
you've renewed my faith in the French. Then that's
Oh, good.
Okay, so I also wanted to share with you today a big project that Matt, our webmaster, took on, and this was to take the last 3 years worth of class projects and put all of the materials up on our website. So here's what it looks like. You would find class projects under the instructor tab or the instructor page. It's one of the sub pages. And then when you get in there, you will see 3 different groupings of these class projects. There were a total of 9 so far. They're grouped into research projects, case studies of anthropologists that were identified as being highly successful, and then finally blog posts and podcasts. I'll have to change that because we also have podcasts that are up there. So these are the 3 forms in which the class projects have taken. All of them had a client. Sometimes ACRN served as the client, but in many cases, there were different clients. There was Pennsylvania Solar, for example, was one client. There were places at, areas in universities that were clients. So we have all of this material up there. If you, as an instructor, are contemplating the idea of jumping on board and taking on a class project yourself, we work with you very closely over the course of the semester. And so this is now my, you can see me, I'm sure that I'm down on my knees, I'm begging. We need one more instructor. We work on 2 class projects each semester, and we have one. We need a second one. So let me tell you in general what the instructor would need to do. First of all, the classes so far, or courses so far that have been taught and used a class project involved either methods, the applied anthropology course, some cognate course, or a capstone. They were either undergraduate or graduate courses. So the instructor has to find a client. If the instructor can't find a client, we can be the client. You reach some agreement with the client on whatever the final deliverable will be, but at a minimum, it will be a PowerPoint presentation. Then you need to work with your students, of course, and get them to understand that they're going to be working with each other. This is a group effort, a collaborative effort. This is not an individual, everybody gets a grade kind of effort. That may be part of what the instructor wants to do on grading, but for the purposes of the class project, it's really all hands on deck. And then we're there to help you. We come in at the beginning of the semester. We have multiple conversations and email exchanges during the semester. We're available for any kind of support that you need. And then at the end of the semester, we're back. We are listening with you and the client to the final presentation, making comments and so on. So for example, this last semester, we worked with North Dakota State, and we were there for their preliminary presentation. It wasn't the final one. The client wasn't there yet. So this was like a practice for them. And it worked out very well because we helped them to think through some issues that they had basically in the 11th hour. And then when 2 days later, they gave the final presentation to the client. And how do the students benefit? The students get an enormous amount out of these class projects. First of all, they're solving a problem, and the problem comes from the client. Number 2, they learn how to manage a project, and they have to work with each other in order to do it, which is, you always hear the complaints about students. A student might be lazy, a student might not be contributing as much, and so on and so forth. This is everybody working together. And then they work to deliver the final presentation. And when they're all done, it's something that goes right on their resume. So they really do have client experience, and this matters tremendously. So that's my pitch. If any of you, or if you know of anyone who would be interested in working with us this fall, you know who to call. Racina.
Okay, so I have to say a caveat. I am not an expert on badges, on digital badges, but our university, Saginaw Valley State University, is considering them. And I've been in now 2 preliminary meetings, and the last one included deans and administrators. I'm also part of a Rural Pathways grant and my department of sociology. That is the grant that paid for the badges that SVSU is experimenting with and will probably continue with. So I'm going to give you the information that I have, and maybe some of you know more about badges than I do. With that caveat, let me tell you where we are. So in case people don't know, digital badges is the next new thing in business and also academics. The digital badges are for education and training. And the thing about them is that they're more usable than, say, a CV would be, or a resume, or even your college transcripts. They are traceable, so that people can't cheat when they say I have skills, and and you can validate the skills that they have. LinkedIn, Microsoft, Google, and Facebook are very heavily invested in digital badges already. The sad thing about this is that the business world, has already, all of the badges that you can get so far have to be bought through a for-profit, and they can get very pricey. So institutions have to put forward. My institution decided it was part of the Canvas course and instructor tour. The mother company of Canvas has badges built in now for a price. So they decided that price is probably they're willing to pay for that price. If they are being used heavily in higher education and universities, but it's not widespread, but it's coming. The state of Colorado has mandated it for all of their universities, and Australia as a country is way ahead. It's mandating it. So it is coming. So I can tell you what Saginaw Valley is doing, and then we can maybe figure out how we can cash in on some of this. So they're proposing 3 levels of badges. The one is for the majors, the minors, and the certificates. So historically, you could only get those things put on your transcripts by a registrar. So the registrar will still control those badges, and it's just a digital image, okay? And then for SVSU, only those badges that go through the registrar will have the official logo of the university on it. So LinkedIn, for example, already SVSU is experimenting with it in some of their outreach programs. And so those badges are already being seen in LinkedIn. So there's a page on what, if you're interested, there's a LinkedIn page on how to put badges on your LinkedIn. So that's one level. The second level has to do with university administrative control. So those may be courses associated, higher level department ones. That level is not clearly defined yet at our university. And then we're already playing with open access micro-credential courses for, like, say, if you want anthropology club, we don't have an anthropology department. We have 2 anthropologists teaching in a sociology department. So we have a soc club. So sociology club could have one. Officers could have one. Any kind of extracurricular activity. But also the interesting thing is what they're doing with them. Badges can be stacked in buckets. So we're already thinking about using them for assessing skills within courses. And so within, for example, my intro anthro course, I'm using Kenneth Guest's. His book is a toolbook for a global age. And so they have to do exercises that give them anthro skills. And I could give them a badge for every one of those skills. And then at the end, I could put that in a bucket of a higher level bucket achievement. So they could get out each section and then a higher level badge for completing all of them. So that's one thing. They're thinking about using it for assessment at the university in all of our courses, instead of the very clumsy way that we're doing assessment in our course assessments. And so I'm assessment rep. So if it makes life easier, but it also it is micro credentialing. So my students will have all these skills that they can take with them. The other thing is that a student, for example, if they learn how to use them, students don't know how to use them yet. Professors don't know how to use them yet. But when students do find out how to use them, there's a way that you can decide which of your badges are sent to which employer. So if you had a set of skills in one area and a set of skills in another, and you're applying for a job, you can tailor which of the badges go to that employer. And I think that's very, very powerful. And so badges also the university is already doing workshops in community and community engagement, and they're providing badges to non-students already. I was surprised with that. So that is a way in which, and because of the cost of badges, we might have to collaborate if we wanted to get badges, but I'm not sure. I'll talk about that momentarily. So they can be used in community engagement. They can be used in service learning. And if you're doing one of these projects with the ACRN, then what you can do is cooperate between the class that you're teaching and provide badges in the course that they're working on. Badges can and are being provided also for community partners and businesses. And so again, non-university personnel are getting badges, and that's another way. Businesses don't yet know a lot about badges. So there's an education that needs to be done with the business community. And as far as anthropology, there's not enough people who understand the skills that we have. So I think there's a place for the Anthropology Career Readiness Network to be educating businesses on anthropology skills. So the question that I have for you is, what do you think? The door is open for us to use the platform. We can educate our students in badges, teaching them how to customize their LinkedIn and their digital portfolios with their badges from their anthropology classes. Educating employers about marketable anthropology skills through the badges. And also, we can standardize certain anthropology badges. One thing the university was really worried about is because of this open level and badges are a free-for-all right now. It's the wild, wild west, as one administrator put it, in badges. So there can be badges they were experimenting. They had a badge for showing up in the office of the administrator, and they got a badge for that. So they can have no rigor associated with them at all. But you're supposed to, the way in Canvas, when you set up the Canvas page for a badge, you have to have your learning objectives and the criteria and the skills listed in the badge itself, so that the employer then gets an understanding of the skills. When I give someone a transcript and it says I took applied anthro, they don't know what skills are associated with the applied anthro. But in this case, with the badge comes all of the description that they can click on, that they can find out about. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us to be on the ground floor for on badges, and also inserting that rigor that needs to be in the badge itself, so that our badges don't become useless, or our badges, that they see the value and they see the rigor that's engaged in these badges. So trying to set pretty high standards for anthropology badges would be something that I personally would like to see. So then the other question is, can we issue our own training and skill badges through the ACRN? And the university didn't give me access to how much money they paid. I tried to get an idea of how much money it would cost to get the badges and how to do that. They wouldn't give it to me. But as I said, I think there's a back door for cooperation between the ACRN and individual anthropology professors who will be able to provide the open source badges. Certainly we can't do it at the highest level of the university, but we can do through professors, possibly our own badges through cooperation. So that's what I know. And it's just the basics. So.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. All right, let's hear some questions or comments.
I saw you almost coming off mute, Suanna. I feel like there's some integration here too with the NAPA standards. Maybe that there could be kind of a collaborative effort too, and also looking at like, yeah, what are we expecting in terms of skills for people saying that they have these anthropology badges? And I will say, I think they're actually a little more present in the business world than you might realize right now. I think it's more the anthropology skills that we need to communicate.
Yeah, no, I mean,
'cause-
Microsoft has tons of them already. If you want,
Yeah.
there are tons of Microsoft badges you can get.
Yeah, I got one with my PMP certificate through Credly, I think is the company that did that one. Now, the one thing I noticed is it's tied to your email address, so it's just something you probably have to figure out for students on how do you take it with you if you don't have access to your email. Yeah, go ahead, Rao.
So I'm fascinated with the money angle. You said they're expensive. So I want to know two things. One, who pays? And two, who gets the money?
Mhm.
So as from what I understand, basically there are companies like Canvas, the corporation that owns Canvas,
Yeah.
Instructature, has heavily invested. It's the one that provides the badges. And the universities have to buy, if you can buy the basic Canvas course software, but then if you want badges, you have to pay extra for that. And so who benefits? Canvas and Instructature benefits.
Right.
And all of them, and Microsoft and Facebook and all these, they own their badges. And so that's the other thing. All of them are owned by a for-profit corporation. There is an I think there is an opening for people to develop nonprofit badges, but it's not there yet.
So
that
if
I've seen anyway.
universities are paying for it, how do they recoup the cost?
It's a price of doing business.
The sunk cost.
It's our university. That's what the administrators are thinking. That is a service added for students.
Well, yes, except having been an administrator myself for 20 years, I will tell you where that's going to go. They're going to figure out real quick how to pass that down to students.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's all. I just thought maybe it's already.
That's definitely a possibility. Right now, the university hasn't been thinking that way. I'm not going to suggest to them that they do that, but yeah, probably.
It will. Yep.
So I have a question about how since it's the Wild West, there are no standards yet, if I understood you correctly, for creating the criteria for the badges or for the badge itself. So Microsoft just issues its own badges?
It does. For example, if you want to learn how to do, use some programming language, they have a course associated with programming language. And when you finish it, Microsoft gives you their Microsoft official logo badge.
So if we tried to do something like this, we would create a course and we would issue a badge and nobody would say anything.
I'm not sure of the business end of that. As I said, the administrator was very clear to tell us that all of the badging that was done had to be done through a for-profit at this moment. So it's the back end. It's the back end of this, so that it's not just that you get it's not that you just get a little image that you have a badge. It's that it's traceable. And so there's all that software programming that has to do so that it's protected and it's traceable, and then it can go into LinkedIn and it can do all these other things. That's the expense. And that may be why nonprofits have not done it yet, because there's all that programming that has to be associated with creating a badge. At least that's my understanding.
I think Ed's been having his hand up for a while, and then Scarlett and Amy. So Ed.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the AAA actually undertook a feasibility study for getting into the credentialing business itself. And we had a number of questions to ask, one of which had to do with standing up a learning management system so that people could track their accumulation of badges and would also have a portal then to see what kind of badge offerings there were and where they could go to get those delivered. A second issue had to do with delivery systems themselves and who would actually be the content providers who would themselves have to be accredited in some way so that we knew that it wasn't just direct that was being distributed, but that it was actually good quality stuff. And then to your question, Ryle, we also looked at price points, knowing that there are a variety of potential sources of demand here. Individual job seekers may see that some of these credentials would actually enhance their job seeking or career advancement objectives. Employers might see that having somebody on their team who had such credentials would advance their competitiveness in a professional services marketplace, and so they might be willing to pay for it as well. And so we looked at a number of issues associated with standing something like that up through the American Anthropological Association, and I think that the flaw there for us was not having a sharply enough focused set of products. That is, what would the substance of the badge be? In the project management professional credential, for example, when you're done with that, you can say, yeah, I know how to design and execute a complicated project with budgets, timelines, and personnel resources and other materials. We were having a hard time actually coming up with what the badges would be for that would be distinctly anthropological. There are some in the field. In forensics, for example, the Royal Anthropological Institute does offer credentialing in forensic anthropology. And there is this organization in cultural resource management, the Registry for Professional Archaeology, that offers an RPA credential, but that is not based on specific assignments like with the PMP. That's based on a sort of review of a dossier of experience that people present. And so I think that this is a really exciting area, and I, for one, think that it's great to see some resourceful, creative thinking going on here, but it is complicated. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Scarlett?
Well, Ed already responded to majority of the questions,
Okay.
but if I may add, I think maybe if all the organizations within the anthropology movement industry will set up like 10 courses of anthropology 101, research methods, methodology, stuff like that, then all they can agree that when they create that badge, they can agree when they see that badge on your LinkedIn page or your digital resume, that will certify you that you have those skills and experience for that specific role or just in general. That's all.
Thanks, Scarlett. And then Amy?
So the community college system has been heavily invested in these things. And so to kind of go along with what Ed had said, NECHI, which is the Northeast Accrediting for Higher Education body, is looking into it. And some of the representatives from my campus are leading that team. The pieces that we do keep running into are things that have already been said, but to add to that, Elizabeth had kind of alluded to it, but just to be very blunt, businesses are the ones that put the value on these badges. And so it becomes a bit of a circular relationship, which has been a sticking point for a lot of my faculty. We like the idea of being able to organize some of these micro credentials into badges that are something that's a little bit more tangible that students can take with them. The comment about the email is one that I enjoyed greatly, Jennifer, because yep, we shut it off after 2 years. So then that doesn't work. But we keep running into the same problem of the skills that students are learning are things that they need to be building to, and how to indicate proficiency and mastery in these kinds of levels and show those elements has become very tricky because there isn't standardizing language. So some of the tools that this group has created, I think, could really answer some of those questions in hopefully a more meaningful way than just waiting around for Microsoft to figure out how my skills should be defined, which just doesn't sit particularly well with me, but perhaps others feel differently.
Totally fair. Nicole, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm, kind of reiterating what other people have said, but at the University of Maine Farmington, we've put together badges for global competency, and I think there's been some challenges with it. A lot about kind of seeing what is the legitimate kind of standards for this, and we have different tiers, and so we've determined sort of what these tiers are, engaged in a global activity or these kinds of things, and so just because everyone is scarcity kind of situation where people are overworked. And so a lot of these kinds of events and different deliverables have been sort of watered down. But then there's also the issue of management, so we had a particular office that was tracking these events and these participation in these different kinds of events. But then when that office basically scaled down, there was no one to oversee it, and a lot of this fell apart. So there's a lot of building up of these badges, and then there's been no one to really track it. And so that's been a real challenge. So I just wanted to mention that as kind of a caveat.
Good, Ral.
I think the point that Ed made a minute ago, connected to some of the stuff the rest of you have been saying, is really important. And I will be blunt. I felt for a long time that aside from methods, anthropology doesn't really teach our students how to actually do anything. It teaches them how to think. It teaches them how to analyze. It teaches them how to find stuff out. But taking the next step and doing stuff, it doesn't. And so I'm not surprised that the folks in AAA had trouble trying to figure out, well, what are we focusing on here with this? I think that's a problem for all of us. I also agree, however, that a lot of the work that ACRN's done has moved us a few steps closer to defining some things, right, that we could use. My issue with all of this is not the badge, although I just can't get, Eagle Scouts out of my mind when I hear the word. Not great connotations in my case, but anyway, never mind. It's that these things are being run by people like Mark Zuckerberg, all right? And what's his name out in Seattle? I mean, this is crazy. Why would we allow through default large mega corporations to define what skills are, right? Which is what's happening. And I'm not suggesting that we can't work around it. I'm sure we can, but I think we need to keep that in mind. So take project management, for example. I've taught project management for 20 years. I could give you a badge, but my project management might look very different from Bill Gates, because I emphasize the humanitarian side of project management. I emphasize inclusion. I emphasize respect for cultural diversity. I emphasize do no harm, all that stuff. I don't hear any of that in the engineering text that I read or the business text that I read. So if somebody comes to me and says, I got a badge in project management, personally, I'm not going to be that impressed. So let me be clear. I'm not arguing against this. I'm just thinking as we go along about, we have a lot of stuff to process here. And I think, talking to people like Ed and Ed's colleagues who worked on this already, and finding some other people like many of you that have made comments in the last 15 minutes here, with your experiences, we could put something together that was an intelligent response to this. But I am a little concerned that if we don't sort of think before we leap here, we're going to find ourselves in places we don't want to be. Anyway, that's it. Sorry.
We'll probably have to move on, but Rosina, how do you feel about potentially contacting the key people that made comments and anybody else that may have written something in the chat that I'm not looking at. And just, hold a Zoom call and see, just decide, should we continue to pursue this? And what questions remain unanswered and that kind of thing. Would that be something that you'd be
Yeah,
doing?
sure. Sure, I'd be glad to do that. And I think that Ralph has come up with some very important questions. But I think it's the exact reason why we should get involved. Because if we don't, anthropology is going to be left behind and the humanity is going to be left behind.
Right.
So yeah, no. Sure,
Okay.
I'd be glad to do this. I
Sure,
feel something
and I
about-
can share the emails, later.
Okay.
All right, great. I think we just have a couple of slides left here. Let's see, where are we at? So Priscilla, I just created this slide that shows the recent blog posts on the left, and the ones on the right are the ones that are in the works. Priscilla, you still there? Oop, maybe she's gone. Well, at any rate, you guys
I
can.
see her
there, she's
photo.
there.
She's there. She's just
So
on mute.
she's
on mute.
Oh, here. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I couldn't unmute my phone. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, no, these are great. And I want to say thank you again for everyone who's written the blog. And Elizabeth, you are really a wonderful partner to work with. And I really enjoy doing the blogs with you because you have wonderful insights into some of the important points that people come up in their blogs. Just hearing this, I'd really be interesting to be hearing a blog on publication. If anybody would be interested in writing something about publishing a publication and maybe even alternative publication, since it does take so long to get academic work out. That's basically my pitch. But everybody who's written blogs, I want to thank profusely, and hope we just get more. The more specific you can get about your work, the better the blog generally is. It's really gives insights into specific forms of work and specific forms of engagement in anthropology. So just always a plea. I always feel like I'm coming to these meetings with my hands out, asking for blogs. But please consider it if you have.
You want to do with a pot, if you have a little.
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
It's okay. I think
I'm sorry,
Rob
did
needs
God
to
leave
do
you
it.
guys on the thing? Oh God, okay, hold on. Hold on.
What are we holding on for?
Zoom meeting up on the computer.
Okay,
Bob's
I don't.
Bob's in trouble now.
Okay. All right. So we always want your blogs. So please contact us, and
I have a
we'll
feeling that
help you.
when the workbook comes out, after a few months of recovery time, we'll
Yeah.
be delighted to write you a blog about what it's like to publish alternatively, because we're all learning. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating and it's a steep climb, but we'll get there. So yeah, we write you about that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that sounds good. So just have two updates. The first is put your ideas in the chat for this one. Workshops at SFAA. SFAA is in Portland in March, or any ideas you might have for sessions. We have a meeting coming up early next week about this. You can also send us emails after this meeting is over. So we're looking for workshops especially. And then the last thing, today I got contacted by Jose Santos, and he's got a brand new article that came out today in Practicing Anthropology, and he mentions ACRN in it. So I call your attention to that article. I have not had a chance to read it myself, so I can't talk about it, but I think that I think it has to do with his view of what's going on in higher ed. And our next meeting, would be in September. So that's what we've got for you